The Rock, the mighty escape-proof jail in San Francisco Bay, dreaded by every American lawbreaker. It is dusk, and within the prison, a mutiny of hardened, life-term killers has become war to the death. Coast Guards, planes and boats patrol the swift waters of the Golden Gate. Armed with weapons from the prison armory, the prisoners boast they will shoot their way out. At dawn next day, press reporters and newsreel men try to land for close-up action. But Alcatraz guards and warders wave them back. The island battle is on. Pathé newsman Frank Vale covers the battle from...
Inside the doorway of the prison, you'll be going into the shower room. However, the showers are not running tonight. You'll be getting an audio headset at the bottom of the building and taking you up into the cell house for the first 45 minutes. You'll be doing an audio tour. The audio tour comes in 11 languages. I've tried them all. I only understood one, and the one that I understand and prefer that you listen to if you can is the English version, because in English you'll be hearing the original voices of the guards, inmates, families of the guards, families of the inmates. They are all telling their story about what it was like to do time here on this island. Because everybody who was on this island did time. Just depending on what side of the bars you were on is how much time you were doing. Now, all of the versions of the audio tour are the same story, but if you can listen in English, you'll be hearing the real deal. Now, when you're done with the audio tour,
oh, that's the morgue? Oh, that's crazy.
Because you're a prisoner until the first boat leaves, which is at what time? 8:40. And the last boat is at what time? 9:25. You guys are good. You can take either boat you wish. It doesn't matter. Both boats are perfectly quick and easy to get back to San Francisco. Now, depending on how late you choose to stay, we'll have other programs going on tonight. I know for a fact that we have stories about famous inmates. A gentleman by the name of Forrest Tucker, he tried to escape Alcatraz not by swimming, but by faking an appendicitis to get a boat ride to the hospital. It's a good story. 8 o'clock outside this doorway. We'll be going in shortly. At 8:20, in the dining hall, there will be a story tonight about Al Capone and about how he rose to fame and popularity, how he crashed and hit the ground hard here. If you want to hear about Capone, it's in the dining hall at 8:20. At 8:35, outside the back door, there will be another escapes talk as well that will lead people down to the 9:25 boat. We also have cell doors being operated tonight. You'll be able to see those real doors work. And there will be another section of the prison open that's called A Block. That's part of the prison that's not normally open during the day, but we open it for night tour guests. It goes back to 1911. It's got the original doors, the original spiral stairs. It probably has some of the original dirt inside there. It's rather interesting contrast compared to the 1934 federal prison in the middle of the building. So lots of things to do. You have the one choice to make about how late you choose to stay tonight, either 8:40 or 9:25. If you have any questions, find one of us in uniform. If you need medical attention, I am your guy, I'm your paramedic tonight. Otherwise, we're going to be going up the road into the building to start you with your tour.
Oh, these are showers? It's ridiculous. Super ridiculous.
The first thing you want to learn when you hit Alcatraz is keep your mouth shut, walk with your back to the wall.
Thank you for joining us on our tour of the Alcatraz cell house. You should now be standing under the sign that says Tour Begins Here. On your right, look for a photo panel entitled Tour Narrators. Walk over to it.
Walk, do not run when moving from one place to another.
I'm Pat Mahoney, former Alcatraz correctional officer, and I'll be your guide. I served 7 years on the Rock. These first photos introduce some of my fellow officers.
I am Philip Bergen, Captain of the Guards, United States Penitentiary, Alcatraz, California.
Well, my name is George DeVincenzi. I used to play checkers with Robert Stroud. I don't think I ever beat him.
My name is Ronald Battles. I asked whether they hired blacks out there. You know how it was in the 50s.
Continue to the left, to the next photo panel. These are some of the prisoners whose voices you'll hear.
Yeah, my name is Leon Whitey Thompson. My number was 1465. I was a man that had total hatred in them days. I hated anything that walked or crawled on this earth. I was a man who was dead inside. You couldn't hurt me no more, see?
I'm John Banner. My Alcatraz number was 1133. I'm a thief, you know. I ended up about number 17 or something like that on the most wanted.
You were a number, you weren't a name. I wasn't Jim Quill, and hell, I was number 586. Everybody wants to be an individual. They want to be a human. And you weren't at the Rock.
My name is Darwin Kuhn, number 1422. Figured I'm never going to get out. Yeah, I'm going to sit right here until I die.
Now, continue to your left. Up ahead, you'll see an open gate on your right. This was called the cutoff. Walk through the cutoff. The Alcatraz cell house opened as a federal prison in 1934. Within these walls lived the country's toughest, most dangerous, and most famous prisoners. As soon as you exit the cutoff, immediately turn right onto the next corridor. It's called Broadway. Walk slowly along the line of cells on the right side. Each cell has a number above the cell door. On your right, find cell number 113. Stop and look inside. Broadway was the first stop for arriving prisoners.
We went right down Broadway, in our birthday suits. And all the guys, are howling.
Well, here's a typical Alcatraz cell. Every one of them in the cell house exactly like.
I had a metal tabletop and a little chair there, and that was about it. The cell was pretty barren.
5 feet wide, 9 feet long, and 7 feet high. And that's what I call a little box.
No decorations allowed, anything. Couldn't paste anything on the wall.
Continue to the next cell. Waiting on the bed for each new prisoner was a copy of the official rules and regulations.
This is the rules of the cell house. Your cell is subject to search at any time.
Your towel had to be folded up and put on your shelf. Your toothbrush, and they used to give us tooth powder in little green containers.
Now, continue ahead to the next cell.
I guess like a cockroach feels in a matchbox.
You may smoke in your cell, in the library.
We were issued a pack of wings on a Monday, Wednesday, and a Friday. Every inmate, whether he smoked or not.
Continue to the next cell.
Sweep your cell and place the trash in the trash
I knew
bin.
every mark, everything in that cell. And pretty soon that cell became like a part of me, or I became a part of the cell.
Look ahead to the far end of Broadway. You should see a clock on the wall. Walk towards it.
Alcatraz is always classed as the end of the line, the point of no return. It was like going into the ground. You know, when you're buried, you're gone forever.
Beneath it is the area prisoners call Times Square. When you get to Times Square, turn left. Look over towards the right and find the large photo of the prison recreation yard. Walk over to it.
This is the rules of the cell house. Your cell is subject to search at any time.
Prisoners had a decision to make, whether to obey the rules or not, to do good time or bad time. That decision affected their lives dramatically.
An inmate is given housing, good food, medical attention, and all the necessities of life.
Everything else was a privilege. Time to exercise outside, getting books and mail, all had to be earned. One of their favorite privileges was the recreation yard.
The most pleasant place, I believe, on Alcatraz, and the most appreciated. The handball court, the horseshoe court.
Prisoners also played bridge out in the yard. They used dominoes instead of cards.
They came out with a system called Auto Bridge. You played it all by yourself. Guys got so wound up in this bridge thing that they ate and slept it. They'd go out there when it would be so cold that you didn't think you could stay out there, yet they'd stay out there for 3 hours and play bridge. And if you're occupied with bridge and you're studying bridge, you're not thinking about going over the wall.
Prisoners who chose not to behave ended up in a harsher place, isolation. You should be facing the photo panel. Look to your left. Directly ahead is an open steel door marked D Block. Go through this door. D Block was the prison within Alcatraz, the treatment unit.
This place is going to operate on the basis that you do what you're told, and you're going to get a fair break. If you don't behave yourself, we're going to come down on you like a ton of bricks.
Unruly or violent prisoners were sent here. They stayed in their cells 24 hours a day. Typically, they were only allowed out once a week for a shower and exercise. Walk over to the photo panel on the wall. You'll see a photo of Robert Stroud. Alongside Stroud, you'll see some other well-known prisoners. Alcatraz was built for men like these.
Alvin Karpis, you got to watch out for him. Former public enemy #1.
Creepy Karpis. When you seen Creepy, you wouldn't have to be told he was creepy because he walked on his toes.
You had Kelly.
Machine Gun Kelly.
Nice fella, never give you any troubles at all. Very accommodating, polite.
Mickey Cohen, Frankie Garbo.
And Capone.
Ain't a fool with Capone, see? He was a street fighter. He's a big man. He was in good shape. The only thing, his brain was gone. He had syphilis. Well, eventually it drove him crazy.
Now, turn back to the cells. Walk over to the cells on the far right with solid green doors. This was solitary confinement, the whole, cells 9 through 14.
When the cell was occupied, the regulations required that the light be on.
But we kept the lights off when they were in there. They were in the dark.
You may enter one of the cells if you wish.
Well, when I'd go in the hole, what I used to do was I'd tear a button off my coveralls. I'd flip it up in the air. Then I'd turn around in circles. Then I'd get down on my hands and knees and I'd hunt for that button. Then when I found the button, I'd stand up, I'd do it again.
Walk through the nearest doorway marked library. Continue into the large open area. This was the prison library.
You put your request on a library card. If the book was available, they'd bring it, put it in the bars for you.
Prisoners with reading privileges could subscribe to approved magazines.
And if it had some story by some convict out of Nebraska or something that was cut out, never mind that you might have been reading a serial and it was on the back of one of them pages.
Prisoners who behaved could also take correspondence courses.
Took a course from the University of Pennsylvania on animal husbandry. The gestation period for a pig is 3 months, 3 weeks, and 3 days.
Now, let's continue. Walk out of the library. Immediately turn left. Walk toward the recreation yard doorway up ahead. Stay along the left wall of the corridor. You're now on C.D. Street.
C and D block. They call it C.D. Street for C and D.
Look for a large photo panel along the left wall. Stop when you get there. In May of 1946, an inmate named Bernie Coy, along with 5 accomplices, decided they would escape to freedom.
Alcatraz was built to keep every inmate directly under a gun.
You should now be at the photo panel. This panel tells the story of the bloodiest escape attempt in Alcatraz history. Find the pictures of the escapees and look at the bar spreader. We'll hear more about these in a moment. Now turn right and continue slowly down the corridor. Directly ahead of you and up above is a 2-story walkway covered with bars. This is the gun gallery.
Well, you had a man on a catwalk, gun gallery, and he carried a rifle and a pistol.
Stop when you get near the end of the row of cells. On Alcatraz, guns were never carried down here on the floor, only up in these galleries.
Anyway, this gun gallery was more or less overseeing the whole prison.
Notice the keys hanging from a hook attached to the gun gallery.
You may wonder what that is. Well, that hook was for a specific purpose of allowing the officer on the floor to send his keys up to the gallery for safekeeping.
You should be at the end of the cell block. We'll be standing here a moment. To escape, Bernie Coy knew he needed the keys in the gun gallery. He arranged for an accomplice in D block to distract the officer in the gun gallery, while he overpowered the officer here on the floor. Next, to enter the gun gallery, Coy used his homemade bar spreader.
He climbed the face of the West Gun Gallery with his homemade bar spreader hanging around his neck. See there at the top of the bars where they curve back towards the back wall? Well, that's where he spread the bars apart, wide enough so that he could squeeze into the gallery.
Coy surprised the gallery officer and knocked him out. He grabbed his gun and keys and dropped them to his accomplices on the floor. Look below the gun gallery to the recreation yard door. This was the door they hoped to open, but none of the keys worked.
You sure you don't know which key opens this control box?
The last thing I heard was, "This is the right key, but it won't open the door."
Outside the cell house, other officers on duty were unaware of what was happening.
The phone started ringing. They weren't getting any answers.
Then, one by one, 8 guards walked into the cell house to be confronted by armed convicts.
More people kept coming in. They kept catching more people.
Get down on the floor and stay there!
Please find cells number 402 and 403. Walk over to them.
You're lucky we don't kill you, you last fake.
8 officers were captured and locked up in these cells. Escape was now impossible. The prisoners' frustrations turned to rage. Joe Kritzer pointed his gun at the officers trapped in these cells.
Wildman Sam Shockley incited Kretzer to kill the captive guards. He shot them in cold blood, one by one, poking his gun between the bars of the cell front.
And then right after that, the siren went off, and they were dead.
Now continue back up the aisle towards the library. Stop at the cutoff across from the library. It is on your left. What happened next became known as the Battle of Alcatraz.
What the hell did they have to live for? They were going to die. They were going to die one way or the other.
Warden Johnson called in the United States Marines. For 2 days, the Marines and correctional officers bombarded the cell house from island slopes and rooftops. You should now be at the cutoff, across from the library. Glance into the cutoff and look at the floor. Those pockmarks were made by the exploding grenades that were dropped by the Marines through holes in the roof of the cell house. On the wall above them, you'll see a metal grate.
Then the next morning, things had quieted down, and we decided that the escapees were dead. We found them there in the utility quarter. They were firing their guns as they died.
At the battle's end, 2 officers and 3 prisoners lay dead, and 2 other prisoners were later executed for their role in the escape attempt. Step back out of the cutoff and onto Seedy Street. Continue walking slowly past the library along the corridor. Although calm was restored for San Franciscans, the Battle of Alcatraz was a stark reminder of the danger of having a maximum security prison on their doorstep. Escape attempts got the attention, but in Alcatraz's 30 years history, most days were uneventful and repetitive. Stop at the first furnished cell. Most accepted that this cell block, however grim, was home for now. Some considered this sunny area the most desirable part of the prison to live.
It was like coming back and greeting an old friend, really.
Take a look into the cells.
I used to do a lot of oil paintings on Alcatraz. If I was painting a scene of the Swiss Alps or something like that, hey, I'm right up there skiing as I'm painting, and I used to escape that way.
My grandmother taught me how to crochet when I was a kid, so I taught a lot of guys how to crochet. Big tough guys sitting in there with a needle and crocheting.
Move on to the next cell. In the 1950s, radios were installed at Alcatraz. You might have noticed what looks like a light switch box with 2 holes. Prisoners plugged their earphones in there to listen to the radio.
We had 2 stations we could plug into. They let us listen to such programs as Boston Blackie,
Pelican, Have Gun Would Travel,
baseball games, and basketball games.
Move on to the next cell.
At nighttime, between 6:30 and 7:30, they have what they call a music hour. They play harmonicas or a guitar or whatnot. They had one guy over there, and he used to play one of these slide trombones. And I think he only knew 3 notes, da da da, da da da. For an hour, that's all I hear, ta ta ta, ta ta ta.
New Year's Eve, everybody had a saxophone or a clarinet or a guitar or whatever started playing. Then they'd take their tin cups and they'd rack them back and forth across the front of the bars.
Turn around and look up at the windows. They face San Francisco and the setting sun.
The yacht club, which was directly across from the island, would always have a big New Year's party. If the wind was blowing from that direction to the rock, you could actually hear people laughing, you could hear music, You could hear girls laughing. You know, you could hear all the sounds that were coming from the free world at the Rock. But New Year's was always the night we heard it.
Continue to the end of Seedy Street. When you get there, turn left. Look for 4 small windows in the wall on the right. They're marked Visitation. The prisoners called this Pekin Place.
When they'd written me that letter and said, you know, you're dead, don't ever come back, we've told your sister you're dead, the whole bit. You know, I'd been there at the Rock 7.5 years. The guard came up and racked my door open and said, Quillen? And I said, yeah. Or said 586, and I said, yeah. You got a visitor. And I told him, I said, you're full of crap. He said, you got a damn visitor. Go down to the visiting office.
Approach the visitors' windows.
I thought, hell, I'll see some good-looking chick at least, if nothing else, you know. And I walked up there, and here's this good-looking girl.
I was nervous, didn't know what to expect.
I knew who she was when I got a real good look at her, and when she said Jimmy, which was what she always called me, hell, I knew it was my sis.
Once I saw Jimmy, it was, you know, he didn't look different, and he was overwhelmed, and he couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe it, that we were there and that I had grown up and that I'd come to see him.
Let's continue. Directly ahead, on the right, look for an open gate with a sign that reads, Administration Wing. Walk through this door. Prisoners rarely saw the world behind this door. We're now entering officers' country. Walk along the left side of the corridor. We're passing the prison control room on your right, but keep walking. We'll stop here again later. Turn left into the first doorway up ahead. Officers reported for duty in this room. This is where the business of running the prison took place. They said, okay, fall in. Step up to the mannequin in the glass case. This is a typical Alcatraz officer's uniform.
Uniform was prison gray with a hat.
I wore a hat all the time.
Regular double-breasted uniform.
And they used to call you red ties because everybody in the place had this red tie on.
Even supplied your shoes and your socks. Didn't look like a policeman. You didn't look like a social worker.
The only thing that you had when you went in the cell house was a whistle.
I carried a sap. We weren't supposed to, but many of us did.
Unlike the prisoners, officers could leave the prison. Many officers lived right here on the island. Walk over to the large window and take a look out.
When you got done work, you just run down, catch the next boat, and you're in San Francisco in 12 minutes. And you can stay, go to a movie, have dinner, catch the last boat back.
Just to the left of the plaza is what remains of the warden's house. Officers' housing was just down over the hill.
Oh, my name is William Long. We had quite a little community there on Alcatraz.
That included wives and children.
My mother was putting me to bed one night, and I could hear the prisoners, they were yelling and just raising a ruckus, and I said, what is that noise? And she said, oh, just the prisoners letting off steam. I'm Jolene Babiak, and I lived on Alcatraz as a child.
We all worked together. We all played together. We had 2 bowling alleys where we had bowling leagues.
We never locked our doors or anything on the island. Never.
We had a little grocery store. It was like living in a very small town.
Now continue through the nearest open doorway. Keep walking through the next small room. The larger room up ahead is the warden's office.
I never did see what it looked like inside the warden's office. The only time I ever found out what it would look like is when I come back as a tourist.
Alcatraz had 4 wardens over its 29-year span. Walk over to their photos. The prison opened in 1934 under the strict discipline of Warden James Johnston.
They call him Saltwater Johnson, see? Things start to change when the new warden come in. They open up a little more.
Move to the next photo.
Yeah, Warden Ed Swope. Nobody wanted to tangle with Swope. The convicts called him the devil.
Next was Warden Paul Madigan.
And his nickname was Promising Paul. He'd promise you everything and never give you nothing.
The last warden was Olin Blackwell. He was in charge when the prison closed.
Oh, Mr. Blackwell. Mr. Blackwell was a character. He was a Texan and a really nice guy.
Now continue through the next doorway and walk outside. Immediately turn right. We're only going to be outside for a short time. Keep moving along the walkway to the open area up ahead. When you get there, find a place to stand where you can see San Francisco.
You couldn't beat Alcatraz, but the beautiful view there.
So there was never a day you didn't see what the hell you were losing and what you were missing, you know. It was all there for you to see. There's life. There's everything I want in my life, and it's there. It's a mile or a mile and a half away, and yet I can't get to it.
Look at the city directly across from us.
San Francisco is only 1.25 miles from Alcatraz, and it's a combination of tides and temperature that makes that swim so treacherous.
I recall getting in that water, and it was like a shock. I didn't expect it to be that cold. If you can do it, it's up to you. But you got to pay the price.
If you find it cold out here, you may walk through the green doors into the front of the cell house. Just inside, turn left and you can look out the windows at the bay.
My father was Arthur M. Dollison. In 1961, he became the associate warden.
On June 12, 1962, Associate Warden Arthur Dollison was in charge, while Warden Blackwell was away on a 2-week fishing vacation.
My father was already up at 7 o'clock in the morning, having his breakfast, and the phone rang. And he told me later that he reached to that phone with dread because he knew that wasn't going to be good news.
Art Dollison got the news that there had been an escape. 3 men were missing from the cell house.
We all believed in the escape-proof myth, and this turned out to be one of the most sophisticated escape attempts in U.S. history.
If you haven't already, step through the green doors in the front of the cell house. Step into the large open room on your left. Now, look into the control room window. When they heard the escape siren, every officer on the island rushed here to report for duty. Prison authorities had made their own plans in case of escape.
The escape response plans were located in a locked safe, and so my father had to go and get the key or the combination and unlock the safe, and then that would determine which officers were armed, where they were positioned, and make sure that all the bases were covered in any kind of an escape.
Now go back and continue down the corridor along the left side. Walk back into the cell block.
Yeah, I wanted to escape. That was in my mind constantly.
You cannot take away from a man the thought that he wants his freedom.
As you re-enter the cell block, immediately turn right. We're heading for what the inmates call Michigan Avenue. When you get there, cross over to the cells on your right. Walk to the large photo panel up ahead. Earlier, on the morning of June the 12th, 1962, Officer Bill Long had been in charge of the first count of the day.
And at the sound of the bell, the inmates are supposed to be dressed and up, standing in front of their doors for count. Bill, there's a guy up here, I can't get up. Well, it's the sergeant says, I'll get him up.
Look across the aisle for cell number 138.
I'll wake him up.
Walk over to it and look inside.
Hey.
And he was laying in there, so I reached in through the bars and I hit the pillow. And Lord knows what happened. The head fell off on the floor. The guy said that I shot back about 6. Here's his face, here's his head, hair on his head and everything. One of the other officers there said, here's another one, Bill, right here. There's one up here, Bill. And I said, don't touch him, don't touch it. A horror movie. And I was right in the middle of it.
You should be facing the cells. Continue to your left to cells number 150 and 152. Prisoners Frank Lee Morris and 2 brothers, John and Clarence Anglin, had escaped the night before. They made dummy heads to fool the officers. Morris was the brains. The Anglin brothers, they were just swamp rats out of Florida. According to the reports, the men enlarged the vent openings in the back of their cells with stolen spoons.
I'll give you a ton of spoons, and I want to see how long it'll take you to go through one of them walls there. Them walls may be old, but let me tell you, you're not going through them cells with them spoons.
They didn't make those holes with spoon handles. They had the necessary tools, hammers and chisels and drills.
No one thought it was possible to get through concrete using spoons, but in fact they were heavy gauge steel, and you break off the bowl and now you've got a drill. And in fact 13 spoon handles and a ladle handle were actually found hidden in 2 cans of cement paint after the escape was over.
Now, continue to your left to the end of the cell block. Turn right. Just around the corner, look for a glass door. Inside is the utility corridor. The 3 men climbed up these pipes to the roof.
At approximately 10:30 that night, there was a sound like a hubcap when you're dropping it, goes rah, 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 but very loud.
They worked for over a year to get up onto that roof, and that would have been the most fantastic moment to have stood there knowing that you actually got out of the most secure building in the country.
The question has never been answered. Did they make it to freedom?
My theory is that they drowned.
They went to South America, because I know they were all studying Spanish.
The men have never been found. Face the utility corridor. To your left is Broadway. Continue around the corner and back onto Broadway. Stay to your left and walk slowly down the corridor. Imagine it is nighttime and the cell house is dark.
Lights went out around 9:30 at night, and that was it.
It was dead quiet. Quiet like a mausoleum.
It was kind of scary walking around those dark tiers, and some would sleep with their eyes open, some grind their teeth, some talk in their sleep.
You lay awake a long time.
I could sit out there in True Tower at nighttime and see the full moon come up.
Continue slowly down Broadway past the cutoff toward Times Square.
In the housing of inmates at Alcatraz, it was deemed necessary to keep the blacks separate from the whites.
At that time, Alcatraz mirrored American society. This part of Broadway was a segregated section for black prisoners. Stop when you get to the end of the cell block.
Mexicans, Indians, whites, they could all cell next to each other. The only ones that couldn't was blacks.
They tried it when they opened up, and they had such a high population of hostile rednecks and such a low population comparably of blacks that they soon found out they couldn't do it.
They finally integrated all the other penitentiaries, but not Alcatraz. Of the 100 or so officers, only a handful were black.
It was very difficult for the black officers. They got rid of anybody with an education because their feeling was someday that guy is going to be my boss.
You should now be at the end of the corridor. This is the area known as Times Square. Directly ahead of you is the dining hall. Step through the doorway and move toward the bars at the back of the dining hall. 3 times a day, all the men in general population gathered here for 20-minute meals. Imagine 200 plus men, each armed with a knife, fork, and spoon. This was potentially the most dangerous room in the cell house.
And if you notice up on the ceiling there, you see these canisters up there dotted around. That's tear gas. And we nicknamed the dining room the gas chamber. It so happened during the history of Alcatraz, they never did trip the button. If they did trip it, they would have made a fatal mistake because them 2 guards in there and the lieutenant would never have gotten out of there alive.
Now walk to the barred area at the far end of the dining room. Behind it is the kitchen area. Notice the knife rack on the left. The shape of each knife was outlined on the rack. This way, officers could tell immediately if one was missing. Even so, some knives disappeared.
I think about 3-4 men got killed with kitchenware.
And I heard that old familiar pop slap, you know, and Chili had drove it into Sosa's back. It was just like an ice pick. He stuck it right in the back, and that was the pop slap I heard.
At the end of 3 decades, over 1,500 men had served time on the Rock. By then, Alcatraz had served its own time. After years of harsh wind and weather, the buildings were badly deteriorated. The isolated island was too expensive to run. And now in the 1960s, prison reformers preached rehabilitation instead of punishment. Early in 1963, Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy ordered Alcatraz closed. Look back toward the dining hall entrance. Walk over to the large photo of prisoners walking down Broadway. They were the last prisoners to leave the Rock on March 21st, 1963. Thank you for taking the Alcatraz Cell House tour and supporting America's national parks.
Wears a bullet gash on his face. 2 guards are dead, 13 others badly wounded. Alcatraz itself bears witness to the furious struggle now ended. The 3 convicts were killed in the fighting. Now they come back to the mainland. This was Bernard Paul Coy, Kentucky bank robber who touched off the revolt. Tennessee kidnapper Marvin Franklin Hubbard is also taken to the city morgue, along with Joseph Paul Kreitzer, California killer, reportedly the brains behind the attempted jailbreak. Well armed and desperate, they tried and failed. 3 others probably face the electric chair. Nobody has yet escaped from Alcatraz alive.